Welcome guys, so we're taking a look now at the beginnings of the unit on figurative and persuasive language. So it's going to be divided up with poetry being the figurative language beginnings. So talk a little bit about figurative language, what that means. We're focusing on the figurative language part to introduce the ideas during the poetry component of the unit. We're also going to continue to use figurative language later when you're looking at persuasive language and speeches, because figurative language is also persuasive. But it's going to be mainly focused on during the poetry section of the unit. So we're looking at figurative plus persuasive language and how they're going to be used together as well. Okay, so we want to keep in mind that you're going to be building from the beginning of the unit with figurative language, and then you're going to want to carry that through and add that to the persuasive language component when you come to do persuasive speech. You'll want to be incorporating figurative language into your persuasive speech as well. Okay, so what is figurative language? What do we mean by that? Figurative language. If you look at the word figurative, I'm sure you can kind of detect that there's another word that sounds similar inside of that word, right? So what word would that be? Figure. Well, does that help us at all? What does that mean, a figure? Well, we say a figure of speech as well is another way to describe figurative language, a figure of speech. But has that helped us at all to clarify what do we mean by figure? Figure of speech. Well, if you think of a figure, right? I don't know, I'll draw a little figure here. Well, here's a figure. Okay, it's got my little bit tubby little guy here. Okay. All right, well, that's a figure technically, right? It's got a shape. Okay, so we're talking about the shape of language in a sense. And that shape has, there are various shapes and sizes in a sense. The way that we can shape and mold language for the purpose of communicating something, right? It's a figure of speech, or in writing, if we say figure of speech, it can be written or spoken. Doesn't matter if it's written or spoken, okay? So we think of this idea of shapes. We can get various shapes, right? And we can actually stretch. We can mold language. Okay? It's elastic a bit. It's flexible. So we can stretch and mold the language to fit what we're trying to communicate. Okay? So the purpose of figurative language is to communicate some idea, okay, in a creative and evocative way. Okay, so it's more creative. Because of that, it's more vivid. or we can say evocative. It evokes an image or idea in our minds because it's kind of memorable. We see some new shape or some new idea combined in a very creative way in these figures of speech or in figurative language. So whether or not you know this, you actually know figures of speech and figurative language. In many cases, you'll already know some of the more familiar ones. So, for example, if you think of a metaphor, okay, and you'll have sheets to do worksheets on for various figurative language. But if we take a metaphor is comparing two things using is or a to be verb or assuming a to be verb like is. So sometimes they don't actually say the word is directly, but you know that the way the sentence is structured, there's two things that are being compared in that way. So let's take two little examples here, okay, that maybe are kind of cheesy, but I'm going to spice it up a bit with a second example anyway. But you might know this one, okay? My love is a red, red rose. All right, there's my metaphor. How do I know it's a metaphor? I have the to be verb is, right? So when there is the to be verb is, two things are being compared. There's A is transformed into B. So A is transformed into B. Okay, it becomes the B because of the is. So the is here in the middle, right? So what two things are being compared in this metaphor? Okay, two things can be, these two things can be ideas. It's usually an idea and an object or thing or person. But there's some idea that is transformed, or the object might be transformed into the idea and vice versa. So in this case, it's my love, right? So here is the idea, A is love, okay? So love is here. And what is it transformed into? Well, it's transformed into a red, red rose. Let's get a brighter purple if I can. Darker purple, something that's clearer. It kind of looks like black, but you get the idea. So love becomes red, red rose. Now, when you think of a metaphor, how do you understand the point of the metaphor? What you need to do is think about the thing that it becomes, okay? And you want to first concentrate on the concrete physical details of the object. So you say, what does this metaphor mean? All metaphors are arguments because they make a claim about something, right? The word is actually argumentative. It means it makes a claim about the reality of something, right? So you're like, okay, what is this saying about love? Now, we know we give roses on Valentine's Day, usually red ones. We don't give black roses on Valentine's. It's pretty universal culturally as well. So let's think about, a rose. Like, what's going on here with this particular metaphor? Well, we've got the petals. Rose is quite a beautiful flower, right? But there's some other stuff on a rose, right? We have these sharp guys called thorns. Okay, these are called thorns. Okay, so if you think about, what is a rose? What can we say about a rose, right? A rose is beautiful, colorful, it's delicate. We have this color red is very important. So, what does the redness of the rose have to do? Well, if you think of, heart, right? Red. Well, what does our heart do? It pumps blood. Okay, so we have blood now is red. How about when you're in love and you get excited and see somebody, your cheeks get all red and flushed? Okay, so you might blush. It's red. There's passion in love. Okay, passion sometimes could be anger too, can be red. If you get in a fight or something or you're angry. But passion plus anger can come from this redness. Now, what if I'm not careful and I pluck this rose? I better be careful, or else what might happen? Well, I might get hurt and there will be blood coming off of these thorns. If I'm not careful when I pluck that rose, I'm going to get hurt and bleed. And that's dangerous. Love is dangerous. If you're not careful and you pluck that rose hastily, you're not watching for the thorns, well, you can get hurt. You can get, your heart maybe be broken now. Right? Your heart will be broken. That's a danger. So what is the metaphor saying? It's saying love is beautiful, maybe delicate, exciting, but be careful or you'll get hurt. Right? So we see how the metaphor is an argument about love in this case. In the next video, we'll do another quick example to show how this metaphor works.